In a world full of joy and possibilities, your voice matters. In a world of injustice, cruelty, and war, your voice matters even more.
திருட்டு நடந்தாலும் வந்து இந்த குறவர் கம்யூனிட்டி சேர்ந்தவங்க தான் திருடி இருப்பாங்க அப்படின ஒரு சந்தேகத்துல
It is clearer than ever that no political party is doing close to enough.
Me jalaron mi cabello cuando pues me violaron.
Governments all over the world punish those who speak up. And still, every single day, brave people stand up and raise their voices.
Stop torture!
Wir wollen einfach nur dafür sorgen, dass weniger Menschen ertrinken und wollen einfach verhindern, dass jemand stirbt. Und das wird uns verboten?
You have the right to agree or disagree with those in power and to express these opinions in peaceful protests. Raising your voice is a human right. And it is our duty to make your voices heard. This is why, over the past 21 years, Amnesty International has honored those who speak out and protest peacefully, for themselves and for others.
We are not alone. C'est énorme. Vous êtes là. Nous ne serons plus jamais seuls. Amnesty International et ses amis sont avec nous. Et quels amis?
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome this evening's presenter, Aline Aboud.
Hello. Good evening. I'm so happy to see you in presence. It's so weird, but it's nice, really. And of course, we also have a live stream. Hello, world. For everyone who cannot be here today. So, welcome to the 11th Amnesty International Human Rights Award. I have to give you some information before, because as you might have noticed, there are some people protesting outside in front of the theater. We welcome the protests as an expression of free speech, right to protest. Fight for free speech and human rights is the purpose of this event. We would be very happy if these rights would be respected by the government of Ethiopia. Whoever has questions on Amnesty's reporting on the situation in Ethiopia is invited to talk to our Amnesty experts on Ethiopia after the ceremony, or to have a look at the most recent reports in the foyer later. So, as you heard now in the film, we are not alone, and you are here. The words of human rights defender Alison Com from Cameroon puts in a nutshell. For 60 years now, Amnesty International has been protecting people wherever justice, freedom, truth, and dignity are denied. Especially people who speak out against injustice are under attack. People in power portray those who challenge them as criminals, terrorists, or foreign agents. Speaking out for human rights has always been difficult and dangerous. That's why we need to support and protect human rights defenders with the most powerful way. Since 1998, the Amnesty International Human Rights Award honors brave people and organizations who have championed human rights under the most difficult of conditions. And today, we are here to honor the Ethiopian Human Rights Council, who has been the voice of human rights in Ethiopia for 30 years. And we are very pleased to welcome Dan Yirga, the Executive Director of EHRCO. Nice that you're here. We'll see you on stage later. But we would also like to welcome and express our solidarity to the 30 employees of EHRCO and many supporters in Ethiopia who are watching us today via the live stream. Hello, Ethiopia. And before we are turning to Ethiopia, we would like to start this evening with the well-known, as you saw her in the film also, human rights activist Svetlana Ganushkina from Russia, who received the Amnesty Human Rights Award in 2003, and who is, as you can imagine, under massive attack right now. She was arrested in Moscow in March and accused of taking part in an unauthorized public action in February. Fortunately, she was released a few hours later. Svetlana Ganushkina is one of the most important leaders of the human rights movement in Russia today. Through her organization, the Civic Assistance Committee, she has provided free legal support, humanitarian aid, and education to over 15,000 migrants, refugees, and internally displaced persons since 1990. Unfortunately, she cannot be here with us today, but she sent a warm greeting to this year's laureate and to all of us.
Дорогие друзья, здравствуйте. Я приветствую Берлин, я приветствую всех, кто находится сейчас в театре имени Максима Горького. Я очень рада хотя бы виртуально присутствовать на награждении такой замечательной организации, как правозащитный центр Эфиопии. Нам приходилось работать с беженцами из Эфиопии, и я понимаю, как трудно тем, кто работает там непосредственно в стране. Вам нужна солидарность, и эта премия, безусловно, одна из форм такой солидарности. 20 лет назад мы получали эту премию, и она была очень важна для нас на всех. Сегодня, когда наша страна ведет страшную войну против соседнего братского народа, мы сейчас занимаемся тем, чем занимались всегда. Мы помогаем беженцам. Но это особенные беженцы. Это беженцы из Украины. Это те, кто стал беженцем по вине нашего государства. Не только помощь этим людям, но и ответственность за то, что сделало наше государство и за что мы все эту ответственность несем. Безусловно, каждый гражданин России не коллективно, а лично отвечает за то, что делает его государство. Тем не менее, еще раз хочу сказать, что я очень рада, что я могу присутствовать здесь. Я очень рада, что я была приглашена, и что мы не оказались париями, потому что наша страна делает то, что она делает, что она ведет войну. Я благодарна нашим устроителям этой встречи, я благодарна Amnesty International, и еще я глубоко благодарна нашим украинским коллегам, с которыми мы в постоянной дружбе и сотрудничестве находимся до сих пор. Они не отвергли нас, и мы не отвергаем их помощь. Мы по-прежнему вместе, и Amnesty International объединяет нас всех в этой нашей общей солидарности в борьбе за права человека. Спасибо.
Thank you to Svetlana Ganushkina. She states quite clearly our country waged a terrible war against our neighbors, while Russian President Putin, his government, and the Russian armed forces are desperate to hide the truth about the war, including the possible war crimes they are committing in Ukraine. Anyone caught spreading what they regard as fake news about the conflict faces a prison sentence of up to 15 years. It needs brave people and organizations to uncover the human rights crisis caused by Russia's invasion. And about the devastating human rights crisis in Ukraine, I would like to talk to Darina Mizina, Digital Mobilization Officer, Amnesty International Ukraine. Hello, Darina. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Although I would be really happier to reach you all under different circumstances. And it's my pleasure to be here today, just we are online, and to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about what is going on in my country.
Welcome, Darina. It's great to have you here, to see you. How are you, and how is your situation right now with Amnesty Ukraine in the moment?
I'm very lucky. Right now I'm in the safe place in Europe. We are lucky with Amnesty International Ukraine team, some of us relocated to the Netherlands and Belgium, thanks to the support of our colleagues. All of my family and most of my friends are still in Ukraine. They are near Kyiv. And that means that every day I wake up and the first thing I do, I check up on them, I text them if they are okay. I read the news, I call them because I need to hear the voice and make sure that they are fine. Some of my colleagues are still in Ukraine. Our male colleagues cannot leave Ukraine because of the martial law. Some of our colleagues have relocated, but we are still work very hard to do everything and to monitor crimes in Ukraine and human rights violations.
We have to say you're in Brussels right now, just for everyone to understand. Russia's invasion has triggered a huge human rights, humanitarian and displacement crisis. Amnesty is helping to keep the world informed about what's happening in Ukraine. What is Amnesty doing right now, and what did Amnesty find out, actually?
So, since the first day of full-scale Russian invasion in Ukraine, we are monitoring and we are verifying any possible war crimes in different cities. We already launched reports on cities in Kyiv Oblast, such as Borodyanka and Bucha and others. We are also going to present a new report about the attack on Mariupol Theater. We are also monitoring war crimes in Kharkiv and other cities in Ukraine. We are trying to keep in touch with Ukrainian activists who were supporters and are supporters of Amnesty to make sure that they are fine. We are collecting testimonies from people whose rights have been violated by Russian invasion. and we are trying to help them as much as we can. And obviously, our most important task is to remind the world constantly that this is going on, that the war is not over, that war is never a good way for people for countries, to deal with any issues, things like that. And the war always lead to war crimes, to human rights violations, to humanitarian crisis, and all of the possible negative results of it.
And what can the international community, what can individuals do to support?
Remember about Ukraine and remind everyone you can about Ukraine. There are many petitions that you can sign that call on stronger support of Ukraine. There are many demonstrations, peaceful protests. I spent some time in Berlin, and I know that each week there is a protest, or even few of them, in Berlin for Ukraine. And it's great when people go there and they support us, they support Ukraine. Educate yourself and educate others, because the only thing that can prevent us from anything like this happening in the future is education, and it's our memory about all of the negative results of it and all of the human lives that were taken, all of the human lives that were harmed in any way, as to educate ourselves and remember about that and talk about this to younger generations, to more and more people, and tell them that there is war, there are war crimes, and everyone who has committed them must be taken responsible for this.
Darina, thanks a lot for sharing your story with us. Please stay safe. Thank you. Big applause.
Thank you.
Bye. And now we hear some nice music, German music, from Johann Sebastian Bach, Sarabande from Partita No. 2 in D minor, from the internationally renowned, thrilling Latvian native violinist Baiba Skride.
And now please welcome the Secretary General of Amnesty International in Germany, Markus Beko.
A map is a two-dimensional representation with arbitrary symbols and incisive lines that decide who is to be our enemy and who is to be our friend, who deserves our love and who deserves our hatred, and who just sheer indifference. Cartography is a name for stories told by winners. Stories told by those who've lost don't have a name. These are powerful words from the novel The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shakaf. And these words of fiction become words of reality wherever we allow those forces to win who aim to divide the world into us versus them, into bad versus good, who define themselves by their hatred and by their enemies. Those who, to grow their power, not only think about dividing territory, but aim at the division of minds, at the division of people. When they, authoritarian governments, demagogic politicians, or warlords, go to war, when they commit grave human rights violations, they use words to misinform, to deceive, and to manipulate, all to tell their version of the world. The crime of aggression by the Russian government in Ukraine is accompanied by a battle of words, of disinformation. Words designed to justify war and war crimes that are not justifiable. Words can be a mighty tool of the powerful, but truth is nobody's property. And truth is the ally of all those defending human rights, the ally of all those who, by collecting and analyzing evidence of human rights violation, by speaking up and speaking out loudly, and by preventing survivors from being silenced, who challenge alleged realities and counter the narratives of those misusing words. They speak truth to power. War is war. Torture is torture. Death is death. Each and every human being is a human being. No matter how hard some try to dehumanize women, refugees, religious minorities, ethnic groups, indigenous groups, blacks, Uyghurs, or Dalits, we are all human beings, born equal, with undeniable human rights, full stop. And there are brave activists out there making sure that these facts stand out, protecting human rights for all human beings. We call these brave people human rights defenders because that's what they do. Honored guests, dear friends, partners and colleagues, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the 11th Human Rights Awards of Amnesty International in Germany. And we are here to celebrate these human rights defenders. And we are here today to especially celebrate one organization that has been pursuing their human rights work for over more than 30 years, EHRCO, the Ethiopian Human Rights Council. And then also from me, a special warm welcome to you and to all of your team. It's great to have you here today. Yes. You and your team at EHRCO, you rally around the call, raise your voice. And this reminds us, words are not only a mighty tool for the powerful, but also for human rights defenders and all of us. Yet, this only holds true if the world, if we listen to them, if we listen to human rights defenders, and if we understand and act accordingly. The war in Ukraine is widely being referred to as a turning point, eine Zeitenwende, and a time we need to recognize failures of previous strategies, and we need to draw the right conclusions for future actions. We need more international order, not less. Ukraine is the tip of the iceberg. Parties to conflicts across the globe have violated international law and committed war crimes without those responsible being held accountable, not in Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, Myanmar, or the Congo, to name only a few. And this lack of enforcement of international order is now endangering peace and stability, even in Europe. And, even in Europe. And it's not only that we need more international order, not less, but we need an international criminal law that can punish. Many states, including the US and in Europe, have, because of economic or power interests, done far too little for the prosecution of violations of international law. Some have obstructed, undermined, and weakened institutions such as the International Criminal Court. We need stronger international bodies and institutions. Let's listen to human rights defenders. They remind us how important institutions like the Human Rights Council and the special UN procedures are for their work and their protection. We need governments to prove that they have learned the lesson, that the future can no longer be defined by accepting double standards or whataboutism, but it needs a coherent, human rights-based foreign policy put into action. We all fail the test. If we turn a blind eye to the ongoing suppression of civil liberties, LGBTIQ, and women's rights, just because Qatar or Saudi Arabia are our new favorite energy suppliers. We fail the test if we turn a blind eye to the systematic repression against human rights defenders in India, just because India is said to be the new alternative to China as a key economic partner. And we fail the test if we turn a blind eye to the blunt violations of the European Human Rights Convention and the rulings of the European Court of Human Rights by Turkey, just because Turkey is a NATO partner. Human rights defenders need our consistent solidarity, whether in Addis Ababa, Moscow, Kabul, Doha, Riyadh, or Istanbul, and they need governments to fulfill their responsibilities from the UN Declaration for the Protection of Human Rights Defenders. Instead, Afghan human rights defenders last year were shamefully left behind at great risk. And many countries, including Germany, have failed to live up to their promise to provide quick and pragmatic routes to safety. Russian human rights defenders who had to flee the country, bravely speaking out, are currently in Germany, often left in limbo, with many of their Schengen visa about to expire and authorities failing to provide the necessary residence permits. The world is largely failing human rights defenders, but they are the ones at the front line, defending human rights, the rule of law, democracy, and the international order. Are we listening to them? Will we raise our voices to amplify their words? Will we join them in speaking truth to power? Stay well, stay strong, wherever you are. A good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcos and Beko. And now I would like to introduce you to Martin Morison, board member of the German Human Rights Foundation Stiftung Menschenrechte, that donates the prize money for the Amnesty Human Rights Award. Hello, please come on stage. Hello, Mr. Morrison.
Good evening. Good evening.
Nice to have you here. You have been supporting the Stiftung Menschenrechte from day on back in 2003. It makes like almost 20 years. What keeps you going?
Yeah, well, 20 years is actually quite a stretch of time, I have to admit. So I guess we are all getting, I mean, you not, but others might get older. Anyhow,
getting older.
So what keeps me going? You know, I lead a very privileged life. I live in one of the richest countries of the world, in a free country. I can read, write, say whatever I want to without having to fear that I end up in jail or something like this. But I always think that a privilege is also an obligation to do at least something for those who are deprived their most basic rights.
Yeah. And what kind of projects do you support?
We support very many different projects all over the world. You just listened to Svetlana Ganushkina. We noted the prize 20 years ago to her, and we are still supporting her. So it's very long-term what we do. It's not only for once, but for a very long period of time. We are doing a lot of work in Russia, but also with journalists in Tanzania, with lawyers in Turkey, in India, and yeah, it's very, very many projects, but we are a very, very small team who only administers it. So if the money that we have goes to 100% into projects, because we all do it on a volunteer basis, which is a privilege.
Yeah, but I guess it costs a lot of money.
Yeah, actually it costs some, well, let's talk about money. Yes, it costs money, a lot of money, and you have to keep in mind that the foundation does not spend the money it gets, but it invests the money, and only the earnings from this are invested then in human rights. So this makes it very, very sustainable. You know, we can stay with our partners for years, for decades even. I mean, this is really something very good, but this only works if we have enough money, and we don't. So, yeah, I think you got the message. I mean, yeah, yes, this is just the way it is. We need more money, and so you can, it's not only about donating, but you can also, there are many different forms how you can help us help these human rights defenders, these human rights activists. So you can donate, but you can also lend us money, and then we invest the money, and so you become an investor in human rights. And I think it would be wonderful. I mean, if you also feel this sort of privileged obligation to do something about it, then it would be wonderful. I mean, we will be standing from the Stiftung Menschenrechte at the exit doors or at the lobby later on, and you can just talk to us. And it would be wonderful if at the end of this wonderful evening, in this wonderful theater, with this wonderful organization with which we also would like to cooperate for many years to come. So if you could get in touch with us and would be the next investors in human rights.
It's all for a good cause. Thank you, Mr. Morrison, and good luck with your mission.
Yeah, thank you very much, and we see us at the exit doors.
Yeah, it's for a good cause, I mean. So afterwards you have time for this. And now another, a bit of music. And now please welcome the great Ethiopian singer Feven Yosef with her band Gungun. They're coming. It takes a little bit of time. It's a big band, hello. And I hope I pronounced the first song. It's Jetziger Kibber, and the second Ethiopia. Gungun.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Vielen Dank. Good evening to all of you again. We are so happy to be here. Gun Band at the back. Give it up. And thank you so much for the 11th Amnesty International Human Rights Award 2022 for having us here on stage. We're very happy to be here. The next song we're going to do is called Ethiopia. And it is simply talking about my good wish, my prayers, and my yearn for peace, freedom, love that shall prevail in the country that I'm originated from, Ethiopia, that can go through the whole world. Peace and love is what the song is talking about. Ethiopia. Thank you so much. Vielen Dank. Enjoy the rest of your evenings. Vielen Dank.
Thank you, Gungun, for this intense and stirring performance. So that makes a, no problem, makes a good atmosphere, no? So, and now I want to welcome on stage and also switched on here from Addis Ababa and Nairobi, Befkadu Hailu, please come on stage. Where are you? There? No. Hello. You just came yesterday. Hello. And switch on Fiseha Tekle, who cannot be here with us today, unfortunately. Hello. We see and hear you. Hello. Hi. Fiseha. Ah, nice to see you both.
Nice to see you too, all of you.
Befkadu, you are, I have to introduce you a bit before, you are one of the most important activists in the Ethiopian human rights movement. You are the executive director of the Center for Advancement of Rights and Democracy. You were a co-founder of the renowned Zone 9 blogging and activism collective and served as an editor and opinion writer. And you received multiple awards and recognition. So it's yeah, remarkable. And you were unjustly prosecuted 4 times and spent 596 days in jail. Maybe you can say or explain to us why were you arrested?
Apparently, I was arrested because I blog and do human rights activism. And as every authoritarian government, the Ethiopian government doesn't like people that tell people's truths to them and to the world. So it's because of mostly what I say and what I do in promotion of human rights and against human rights violation that I get jailed about 4 times, yeah.
Befkadu, there have been changes under the new government, under Prime Minister Mr. Abiy Ahmed, and how is the current state of freedom of expression in Ethiopia?
The current state is, honestly speaking, it is sad to put it in comparison. In 2019, just a year after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed took power, the Committee to Protect Journalists published its yearly report and said that this is the first year in many years that Ethiopian prisons did not see any journalists. Unfortunately, as we speak today, 18 journalists are in prison and 16 of them are in a new wave of arrest, were jailed in the past 2 years. So the space, the media space that has started with optimism in the leadership of Abiy Ahmed has regressed back within 4 years, and the chilling effect is reaching almost all journalists who are working from inside Ethiopia.
Okay, thank you. Fiseha, you are born in Addis Ababa and now living in Nairobi, where you work as Amnesty International researcher on Ethiopia and Eritrea. Since the beginning of the armed conflict in northern Ethiopia in 2020, Amnesty International has witnessed gross human rights abuses committed by all parties to the conflict. Amnesty has documented war crimes and crimes against humanity in Western Tigray and beyond. How is Amnesty doing research on the region of conflict?
Thanks, Aline. Amnesty International has been documenting and collecting evidence of atrocities committed in Ethiopia for years, and we have been documenting the human rights violations committed in the context of the current conflict in northern Ethiopia. Since we don't have access to the country, even if we repeatedly asked for access from the government and from the authorities in Ethiopia, we were forced to use a combination of tools and methods which we use in all contexts where we are restricted by repressive regimes. From accessing, from doing our work on the ground. Those tools include speaking to witnesses and victims through secure communication lines, interviewing and also speaking to humanitarian organizations that have access on the ground sometimes, and using a combination of human rights verification tools such as satellite imagery analysis, open source data verification, and also forensic analysis and geolocation. And through these methods, we've found human rights violations in the context of the conflict in northern Ethiopia that can amount to crimes against humanity and war crimes. These are violations that can be punished and should be prosecuted under international criminal law. Thank you.
Befkadu, is there a strong local civil society in Ethiopia, and how is it possible to work in these circumstances? I mean, can you work while there is this conflict?
Yeah, unfortunately, again, we don't have strong civil societies based in Ethiopia mostly because, you know, especially in the past years, it was in 2019 that the civil society law has been revised and has opened relatively to have, you know, a free space for civil society organizations to work. But previously, the civil society law has restricted funding sources and also put other bureaucratic restrictions. Therefore, most of the civil society organizations previously existed, died out, and the remaining one, like the Ethiopian Human Rights Council, survived with, you know, a lot of struggles, and they have been weakened for that matter. The only human rights organization that is doing human rights violations investigations is EHRCO. So this is how much weak the civil society organizations in Ethiopia are, even though, you know, the problems and the challenges we have been experiencing are growing and bigger than, you know, the people who are trying to counter them. So so far, we have been relying on reports done by the international organizations and also the civil society organizations that are emerging now after the introduction of or the adoption of the revised civil society are dependent on foreign funding because we are apparently a poor country and raising funds from local sources is not as easy as it may be in here. So the civil society organizations need technical and financial support so that they can be as influential as we need them to counter the challenges existed, especially in promotion of human rights and also protecting the dignity of its people.
Fiseha, how does Amnesty collaborate with the local civil society in Ethiopia?
Well, that's an important question, but unfortunately, I cannot say that we have been collaborating with this organization or that organization in Ethiopia because naming them can put them at risk because the government they can be easy targets for the government. And as I have already told you, Amnesty International has been asking repeatedly to do research on the ground, and the purpose of such restriction was to stifle the human rights repression and violations from coming out. So working with Amnesty International in public can be risky, and so we work with human rights defenders in the country. They are really helpful for our research, for verification, and for other research processes. But unfortunately, we cannot say that we have been working with this organization or that organization because that would compromise their security as an organization and as individuals.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. Maybe a question to both of you. What are your calls on the first Ethiopian government, and also what do you expect, maybe by example, from the German government? Maybe you first.
I'm sorry.
Maybe what are your calls on the Ethiopian government, and what are your calls on the German government?
Yeah. So the new leadership of Ethiopia that assumed power in 2018 came with a lot of celebration because it came promising the respect of human rights and human dignity, the promotion of democratic values and principles. But, you know, years after years, it is abandoning its own promises. So I call upon the Ethiopian government to uphold its own promises and respect the rights of Ethiopians, and to also stop the war that's going on in Tigray, in western part of Ethiopia, and also other multiple conflicts in Benishangul Gumuz and other areas. And it should also make the recent national dialogue, which was introduced by the government, a meaningful one, a fair, transparent, inclusive, and that transforms Ethiopia from the challenges it has been experiencing to a very freer, democratic, and peaceful constituency. That's the call I have for Ethiopian government, and I call upon the government of German international organizations, Amnesty International, and others to continue putting pressure on Ethiopian government to do better than what it is doing now.
More pressure on the government.
Yes.
Fizeha, how do you answer this question, maybe on the Amnesty perspective?
Well, as Bafkado has said, we had a lot of hope that the new administration by the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed would have built on its promise that was there at the beginning. At the beginning, they released thousands of political prisoners who were in prison for dissent and for political, for their opposition political activities. They have changed some of the repressive laws. And you might remember that the current Prime Minister received the Nobel Prize of Peace because one, because of his human rights progress, the reform he has promised, he has started in terms of human rights in the country. But as time went on, that promise was not fulfilled. Instead, it was going back. There was a U-turn in terms of that promise and in terms of human rights promotion and protection in the country. So what I would advise the Ethiopian government is that they have to understand that repression was the nemesis of all Ethiopian regimes. The previous regimes, the previous Ethiopian governments failed because people stood up against the repression, the repressive measures they were upholding for years. So they have to take a lesson from that. Instead, they have to consider measures that can address the cycle of violence which has become frequent in Ethiopia. By ensuring accountability and justice, they can stop the culture of impunity in the country. And where there is a culture of impunity and where there is no accountability, the cycle of violence is going to continue. This is what happened in Germany and other places where the world had witnessed atrocities. So the Ethiopian government should learn from countries like Germany and other places where atrocities led to proper accountability and justice for the victims.
Thank you, Fesehati Claire, for your time and all the best. And Bifkadu, Hailu, thank you that you be here. And all the best for your work. Thank you. You can. That's nice. No? Just a few words to this beautiful sculpture. The internationally renowned sculptor Tony Craig is not only building impressive sculptures in front of the German parliament, the Deutscher Bundestag, or at the Venice Biennale, he also creates and donates every 2 years the prize sculpture for the Amnesty Human Rights Award. This is it. So we should honor this. My best wishes to a wonderful country with a great history and culture, but it gains its real glory through brave, wonderful people like you. Keeping work, God bless you. Wish I could do more to support you and your work. From Dorothea Küpper. The world would definitely be a better place if there were more people like you. Thank you so much for your precious work. Congratulations, you really deserve this honor. I wish you all the best. From Eleonora. Thank you for your courage, your perseverance, and the help and hope you give to the people in Ethiopia. You are also a model for us. From Anna. Thank you so much for your important work. I wish you power, courage, and hope to carry on with this work. Congratulations. People like you can change the world. Best wishes from Germany. From Gundi. These are messages from people showing that they stand firmly by the side of the staff and the many volunteers, supporters of the laureate of the 11th Amnesty International Human Rights Award, the Ethiopian Human Rights Council.
Back in 2005, I was watching the individuals who were killed by security personnel, beaten by the security personnel. So their pictures were really gruesome. And while I was watching that, I was wondering, oh, is there a human rights organization in Ethiopia, an independent, competent, non-partisan, above all, who can criticize, who can challenge the government in this way?
Since 1991, the Ethiopian Human Rights Council, EHRCO, has relentlessly been the voice of human rights in Ethiopia. The organization has set itself the goal of promoting respect for human rights, is committed to establishing a democratic system, and persistently calls for the rule of law in Ethiopia. For this, its supporters have been insulted, imprisoned, tortured, expelled from the country, and even killed. Despite these intimidations, EHRCO has stayed strong.
As we are a watchdog, the government and any stakeholders would see that we are here to see their wrongdoings. after we observe them, we release reports. We disclose the transgressions of human rights in Ethiopia.
EHRCO offers free legal advice to victims of human rights violations and monitors trials and court activities. The Council also conducts human rights education and training across the nation for police, prosecutors, officials, the youth, women, and various sectors of society.
The citizens of Ethiopia have benefited from EHRCO a lot. That is because EHRCO was the voice of the vulnerable, speaking, fighting, promoting, and even monitoring the government actions regards of human rights.
The outbreak of the armed conflict in the north of the country in 2020, particularly in the Tigray region, makes EHRCO's human rights work even more indispensable. All parties to the conflict have been committing grave human rights violations. Despite harassment and reprisals, EHRCO has collected evidence for violence against women, abductions, extrajudicial executions, and random mass arrests of Tigrayans. In light of its findings, EHRCO urgently calls on the authorities to bring justice to victims of human rights violations.
As a human rights defender, I wish Ethiopia to be a country where all citizens enjoy freedom of expression, all citizens enjoy, the respect of human rights, all citizens enjoy and feel safe by the rule of the law, and especially I wish Ethiopia have, and engulfed with peace, not war, not conflict, but Ethiopia being engulfed in peace.
It is a great honor to welcome to the stage the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders, Mary Lawler.
Hello everyone, dear friends. I am delighted to be with you here this evening to celebrate the work of the Ethiopian Human Rights Council. I would like to thank the German section of Amnesty for inviting me to this prestigious award. I believe awards like these can bring a vital role in helping protect human rights defenders at risk by bringing their work to a new audience, by emphasising that that work is internationally recognised as legitimate, and by raising the political and reputational cost of taking action against them. For all these reasons, I would like to salute Amnesty International Germany and the Human Rights Foundation for their continued support for the award. And we all heard your plea for money. This year's winner is an organisation that epitomises what it means to be a human rights defender. When I was first informed that the Ethiopian Human Rights Council would be awarded this year, I thought about how the organisation has made such an impression on me over its long history. That long history in itself is one of the first things that came to mind. The resilience that EHRCO has shown over 30 years in some of the most challenging conditions for human rights defenders has been nothing short of remarkable. There have been multiple occasions in its history when giving up must have seemed like an attractive option. Perhaps when 37-year-old executive committee member Asifa Maru was murdered in 1997, or the multiple detentions, or the house raids, or when the organisation had all its accounts frozen in 2009 with the introduction of legislation severely hampering the work of NGOs. Yet at each turn, the Ethiopian Human Rights Council chose the more difficult but braver path, driven by the instincting belief that a different Ethiopia was and is possible. I remember talking at length to a human rights defender 17 years ago from the Ethiopian Human Rights Council, who was very much in danger. He described his life and the relentless stress he lived under. He didn't want any personal publicity or recognition, and while doing his work, he hid behind his professional qualification for security reasons. He is one of the human rights defenders in my lifetime that has been imprinted on my brain. And it is for his silent, dedicated, selfless work, anonymous then and anonymous now. I remember too how in 2009, Ethiopia brought in the law that required at least 90% of associations' incomes to come from local instead of international sources. An impossible ask, as we've heard, from in an impoverished country, and a deeply cynical move by the Ethiopian government. Sadly, it gave way to the rake of legislation on foreign funding by other oppressive governments as they learned from them. The introduction of the new NGO law in 2019, lifting those restrictions which had stymied the organization's growth and development for a decade, was a testament to the resilience shown by EHRCO and other civil society organizations in Ethiopia. That commitment to justice, to doing the right thing, during a dark 10 years when the government had clearly identified civil society as the enemy, was rewarded with a more open, tolerant working environment. And it brought to my mind a quote from the great Irish poet and Nobel laureate Seamus Heaney, who said, "If we winter this one out, we can summer anywhere." The experience in Ethiopia showed the international community that despite so little space over the past decade, human rights defenders continue to act as key agents of social change, even in the most difficult or seemingly hopeless of circumstances. And human rights defenders do achieve victories, and they do create space, and they are so essential in helping to build civil and just society. If there's one thing the 45 years in the human rights movement has taught me, it is that the trends never move in one direction only, and that progress and pushback often occur simultaneously. So while I'm sure there was a brief moment of respite for EHRCO and others in 2019, they did not pause for long. The organisational rebuilding, which took place after 2019, once again demonstrated that vision for a better, more accountable, more just Ethiopia. This decision to rebuild was surely validated with the subsequent outbreak of war and reports of appalling human rights violations in 2020, ensuring that the Ethiopian Human Rights Council's skills, experience, networks and expertise were as necessary as ever. When David Kay, the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression, made an official country visit to Ethiopia in late 2019 to assess the then ongoing reforms, He welcomed the progressive steps taken by the government, but cautioned that it was, and I quote, only the start of a process that will take years of legal and policy commitment and persistent dedication to human rights oversight and public participation. Sadly, it's clear that policy commitment by government has been a casualty of the war, as an atmosphere of suspicion has descended on the work of human rights defenders. In his most recent report to the Human Rights Council on reprisals, the Secretary-General warned of the limited engagement by civil society actors in Ethiopia with the UN due to a fear of reprisals, in particular for those working in conflict-affected areas. Yet once again, while government abdicates responsibility in fulfilling international human rights commitments, human rights defenders, and in this case the Ethiopian Human Rights Council, are holding up to their side of the bargain. It is they who are showing persistent dedication to human rights oversight and ensuring a public participation, often at great personal risk. What's more, given the extremely difficult times that they have been through and are going through, we admire your fortitude. And the price you pay, and knowing that you won't simply abandon ship if things become more difficult still. At a time when much of the political and media attention in Europe is focused on the war in Ukraine, there is a danger of us forgetting the risks being taken to secure human rights elsewhere by human rights defenders, be it Afghanistan, Sudan, Myanmar, Yemen, or Ethiopia. I would like to end, because I'm in Germany, with the famous quote by Pastor Niemöller, who not only awakened me, not only because it awakened in me, a long time ago, the rationale for human rights work. But more importantly, I think it speaks to the spirit of the Ethiopian Human Rights Council in their determination to have the voices of the marginalized and the victims of injustice and atrocities heard. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. It gives me great pleasure to congratulate the Ethiopian Human Rights Council on winning the 11th Amnesty International Human Rights Award, and I would now like to invite Dan Yerga, the Executive Director of the Ethiopian Human Rights Council, to the stage.
I wish I could speak German so that I would tell you what is in my heart, so that I would make more sense, but I will try with English. Honorary guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to be here in Germany and to receive the 2022 11th International Human Rights Award given by Amnesty International, the German section. Thank you very much. First and foremost, on my name and on behalf of the Ethiopian Human Rights Council team, I really would like to thank Amnesty International Germany section for giving us this prestigious International Human Rights Award. This award is a value tag for EHRCO's 30 years of long way of human rights protection efforts and sacrifices of human rights defenders. Of course, this award would unquestionably encourage us and boost our efforts to do more. This award means a lot for all of EHRCO's family, entire staffs, board members, volunteers, and even all our partners that reach to our donors, supporters. Hence, I am genuinely grateful on the name and behalf of all our stakeholders and partners. Some of them are here. Had it not been for all of these consolidated efforts and supporters, we wouldn't make it to receive this prestigious award. This award will be dedicated to EHRCO founders such as the late Professor Mesfin Woldemariam and his co-founders, all those who sacrificed their life, liberty, and passed it to my generation. It was 15 years ago that I joined Ethiopian Human Rights Council as a volunteer and member. After I found a piece of report that lists all human rights violations and calling the government to respect and protect human rights in Ethiopia, I was surprised by this report and wanted to join the council so that to contribute my part in its efforts for human rights, then gradually became a full-time junior human rights investigator, and then served in various responsibilities. Currently, I am leading this noble and resilient human rights defending organization. This job is a job that I really like most, and I can't think of working any other jobs despite the fact that defending human rights is a very challenging task in Ethiopia. I can't easily stop defending and promoting human rights as my efforts together with colleagues, as you can see them in the picture, which is very much needed to make human rights at the center stage and fully enjoyed by all Ethiopians without any arbitrary restriction. Quitting would not be an option. It will only make human rights unheard. In addition to various forms of challenges, EHRCO members were killed by government security forces. For instance, the assassination of our executive committee member, Atwasa Famaru, on May 8, 1997 by federal police, and later on also Tesfaye Taddese was extrajudicially killed. No one held accountable so far. We are also subjected to arbitrary arrests, harassments, intimidations, discrimination, just because challenging the government whenever it fails to respect and protect human rights in Ethiopia. There was even a period when our bank accounts were frozen. Our staffs were forced to leave the country due to the intimidation and fear for their life and liberty. All these various challenges never break down EHRCO's courage and efforts for voicing human rights and voicing for the voiceless. It is this sense that I can proudly say that this award is the outcome of EHRCO's 3 decades of hard work, commitment, and sacrifice. EHRCO incontestably well deserve this award. EHRCO could not conduct human rights investigation work in some of the areas, including Tigray, due to the ongoing conflicts and tensions. We are unable to do as our work requires a physical presence. For investigation activities, could not also get adequate information as the internet and telephone communication has been stopped. The current human rights situation in Ethiopia is not good, having the conflict in northern Ethiopia being far from over. And the mass arrest is going on, including, as we speak, about 18 journalists are behind bars, and a lot more that also includes human rights defenders, activists, political party members, opinion leaders are now being arrested, especially in these recent weeks. The situation of internally displaced persons, IDPs, in IDP camps are still in need of due attention and urgent attention. Those who displaced because of the conflict. EHRCO has repeatedly released statements condemning the aforementioned alarming human rights situations in Ethiopia. EHRCO provides core programs, services, and functions like human rights monitoring, investigation, and reporting on human rights situation. EHRCO branded itself for its one-of-a-kind human rights monitoring and reporting organization with over 30 years of genuine experience. Over the years, EHRCO has investigated, documented, and issued about 150 special reports, 39 regular reports on various types of human rights violations, and also urgent press statements on human rights situation in Ethiopia. In addition to human rights violation investigation and reporting, EHRCO is also working in prison monitoring, trial monitoring, and also election monitoring. Human rights awareness trainings, advocacy, research, and free legal aid services also take a prominent EHRCO's effort. Additionally, our organization also works in designing, developing, and implementing different programs and projects. These are mainly focused on human rights and organizations in partnership with different partners that are still helping us. Amnesty has been supporting Ethiopian Human Rights Council in various forms, such as in capacity building trainings to its human rights investigators and in some other technical supports. This support has been helped the Council to better investigate, report, and document human rights violations as well as human rights advocacy workers. In my conclusion, I would like to call different national, regional, international human rights organizations that share the same values as EHRCO, different stakeholders to collaborate with us and work to bring about change, as well as to kindly support in all positive means they could support for our activities. Furthermore, I would also like to call the Ethiopian government to take bold and genuine steps to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights. I would also like to call all warring sides to stop war and give a chance for peace and to resolve all differences they have through dialogues. In this effort, all international organizations, countries, including Germany, could now play a pivotal role in this process. So it is with great pleasure that I conclude my remark. Thank you so much once again. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Just stay here. Thank you, Dan Jäger. And I would like to bring all the participants here on the stage, please. And if you want to take action, just have a seat. No stress. You can sign the petition of the protection of human rights defenders and journalists in Ethiopia or join a solidarity action for the EHRCO. Both can be found in the lobby of theater or online at amnesty.de. Thanks to our interpreters. I think they're behind the scene. Yeah, big applause. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of you who have contributed to this evening for human rights. Thanks for being here. So, ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to say goodbye. We are at the end of our show. Thanks a lot. And I invite you to the get-together in the garden and the lobby of the MAXIM GORKI Theater. Let's celebrate human rights. Let's celebrate it with the Ethiopian Human Rights Council and with DJ Master Sai later. So, a big applause.